Hi, my name's Evan Klein. I'm writing a fantasy book and documenting the tips and tricks I've picked up along the way from other successful fantasy authors and how I'm using Notion to implement those. This is a video where I do a deep dive on plot archetypes. I picked up this idea from Brandon Sanderson. He has a great lecture series on creative writing. He taught at BYU and is for free here on YouTube. This is a little bit of an advanced use case in Notion. I'm recording this video, one, to show you how I do it, but also to show you what's possible in Notion, especially in regards to writing books. So I hope this is useful for you. If you have any questions while you're watching the video, please put them in the comments, and I hope you enjoy. Here's my dashboard for the fantasy plot I'm writing. I gave a brief overview of this in my last video. In this video, I wanted to zoom in on one of the aspects of how I'm plotting, and this is specifically related to a Brandon Sanderson lecture I listened to. He has a great creative writing series that he taught at BYU that's available for free on YouTube. And I want to show you how I use one of his pieces of advice for that for my plotting. So I'm going to click into one of my point of view plots. So what I have set up here is a database where, just like Brandon Sanderson suggests, you can look at different plot archetypes. In his lecture, Brandon Sanderson differentiates between a plot structure, which is something like the 3-act structure or the hero's journey. The hero's journey, you can think of something like Star Wars, pretty diligently follows the hero's journey. I actually use a plot structure called the 27 chapter method. It's a derivation of the 3-act structure. And then in addition to the plot structure, Brandon Sanderson talks about what he calls plot archetypes. Basically, it's this idea of there's a certain archetype of movie or story that are heist movies, or there's a certain archetype of movie or story that are romances. And in his lecture, Brandon Sanderson says it's really handy to pick one of those archetypes and look at stories, other stories that do it well, and see if you can draw from those main story beats that tend to happen in each of those types of stories. So I have my database and Notion set up here to where I can map my plot structure, and then underneath that, I can map my character plot, and I can add in these plot archetypes to where I can look at them and just kind of see, are there aspects of all of these that I can use for my character plot. So for Drayden here, he's a combination right now of about 3 plot archetypes. Sanderson says in his lecture for an epic fantasy, 4 plot archetypes is appropriate. He says you kind of need to pick one and have that be your main one, but you can have these other supporting plot archetypes. So for Drayden's plot, he is a riches to rags plot archetype. So you can think of Walter White in Breaking Bad or Dorian Gray in The Picture of Dorian Gray. And he has a couple sub plot archetypes. I have Knives Out mapped out here. There's a little bit of an information plot, as Brandon Sanderson calls it, a little bit of a mystery as his subplot archetype. And I also have a relationship plot archetype in there. I found a relationship plot is, at least for Breaking Bad and for Dorian Gray, is kind of built into it already. Walter White has his relationship with Jesse, and in The Picture of Dorian Gray, he has a relationship with Sybil, at least in Act 1. It's been pretty easy to kind of draw similarities between those two. What I can do in my database is, one, I can easily map out new plot archetypes. So if I want to watch a movie or read a book and distill down what the main story beats are, kind of see what the structure of it is, I can easily add a new plot into here. So I'll just put in a test plot. And then I'll get into how this works later, but I would need to, I did that from a previous recording. I would need to add in the test plot here. There's other ways I can do this, but I'll explain this in a little bit. But I created this separate tab here to make it easier just to add new plots. And then just right in here, I can start adding in new scenes. And so if I wanted to do a specific case study on a new story, it'd be really easy for me to just plop that into here. And then it would be really easy for me to just look at these other stories side by side and see kind of where the scenes line up and what the similarities are. What I've done for myself, just my own education, is I've created a separate rags to riches story arc where I'm looking at these other rags to riches stories, and this is where I'm mapping out these are where I think the similarities are, so that in the future I can just pull up my riches to rags story arc and look at that. So how does this all work? So there's five main components that draw this all together. The first top level piece is I have two separate databases that are working together to be able to show this. The first is my plot database. I can go and show that to you real quick. So I have a database just where I simply have all my plots. These are my point of view plots. These are my example plots I'm using. This is my overall plot structure that I have as a specific plot in here. And then in addition to the plot database, I have a scene database. And this is where I break out the plot into its individual elements. So in my main kind of archetypal plot, the 27 chapter method, I have my 27 scenes in this database, and then I have the scenes from all my other plots. And so this is a much bigger database than the other one. And we'll just go back real quick. To make sure that those two databases talk to each other, I simply have a relationship between the scenes and the plot. So within the plot, I have a relationship to the scenes, and then conversely, within the scenes, I have a relationship to the plot. To get the views I want in my linked database, and this is a linked database I have right here that is linked to the scenes database, because the scenes are really the main thing I'm adding into here, and the scenes are the main thing I want to see. And so this is the main views of the scenes, and then I have this listed as a board so I can have a subgroup, and my subgroup are the plots. So that way I can see all the scenes, and those scenes are separated by the different plots they're related to. A couple more relations that are important. The plot has a relationship to itself, so I can have a parent plot and a child plot. And similarly, the scenes have a relationship to itself. So I have a parent scene and I have a child scene. Then I have roll-ups that pull the information from either the plot or the scene it's related to. So the scenes, I have a roll-up that also has on here the plots, and also roll-ups that pulls all the child scenes from the parent plot. I don't need any roll-ups on the plot database because the main thing I'm filtering for are the scenes. And I'll show you how that works here. So the reason why I have the roll-ups is for the filter. And the filter is really simple. I just filter for Act 1, and each of these tabs filters for a different act. Since there's 27 scenes I'm using for my plot structure, I just have it divided up this way so it keeps it a little more tidy. And then I'm filtering for, on the scenes, I'm looking for where the child plot of a scene contains Drayden. So if we go into one of our scenes, the child plot roll-up, we're looking at the relationship of the plot, and then within that plot, there's a child plot property, and that's what I'm trying to roll up to look for. So that works because on Walter White, if I add Drayden as a child plot, then when I go back to the scene, a Walter White scene will roll up Drayden as a plot. And so that way, all I have to do is on the filter for this child plot, make sure it contains Drayden, and then it will only show plots that I've related to Drayden here. And that's what this little genre plot tab is for. I can easily, on the Drayden plot, I can add what the parent plots are right here really quickly. And then if I add a parent plot here, it will do the reverse here. That creates Drayden as a child plot in the Walter White Breaking Bad genre plot. Now, I'm sure that's sounds a little convoluted. This is a little bit of an advanced use case in Notion, but what that allows me to accomplish is doing the Brandon Sanderson method of plotting fairly easily, where I can put plot archetypes here. I can take the time to map them out. You can go on IMDb and look at plot summaries, or Wikipedia usually has pretty good plot summaries where you can pretty easily find the main plot elements and then use those to plot out my character. So I hope this was helpful. I think this method that Brandon Sanderson teaches is really useful. As he says, you can create things whole cloth from scratch, but it is very useful and handy to be able to have some guideposts to use as you're writing your story. And as he also said, I don't treat these things as hard rules. These are all just guidelines. I can use my creativity to play jazz, if you will, with the story a little bit. As Sanderson says, it's really handy to have this as a tool. I wanted to show you how I use this in Notion. I hope it's helpful for you.